Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Alshorn. I'm with Rainbow Atheists, a community group with the Humanists Australia. We're based geographically in Melbourne, but we have members all over the world. And sorry about that. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners, occupiers of the land on which we are Zooming, and pay my respects to their elders and communities past, present and emerging. I think that's a very important thing for us to do. I'd like to welcome everybody here today and thank you for attending. Like I've previously said, we are recording this session, so if you have issues with privacy or concerns or whatever, please do keep your video mute, closed or turned off and your microphone muted during the talk. And I'm certainly hoping we will have some question time at the end if people have questions or clarifications. I'd like to start off obviously by welcoming Mandisa to our Zoom meeting today. I think it's actually very interesting and exciting to have her coming along and giving us a speech on a topic that I find really quite fascinating, and I'm sure many other people will as well. So Mandisa, if you're there, hello and welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me, Jeff, and thank you, Mary Ann, and everyone at Humanists Australia and at the Rainbow Atheists. I will say that it is exciting to be connecting with humanists across the globe. And Australia is on my bucket list to visit. So I will be mentioning that again during the presentation because I would absolutely love to coordinate a visit there, the opportunity to actually come there in person in the near future, post pandemic, or working through the pandemic. So this is really, really exciting. Again, it is an honor to be invited to speak with your group, and I appreciate everyone from the BN networks who is here this evening. And it is amazing for us to connect because this is really, really important for all of us. So I know in Australia it is technically March 23rd, which is International Women's Day, and March 23rd is also Atheist Day, which will be that day for us tomorrow here over in the United States. And it's really good that we are starting to acknowledge, um, days that, or that we have days to acknowledge our identities because all over the world we're still dealing with the stigma surrounding atheism and non-belief and those who don't, those of us who don't believe in God in any way. So it is important for us to mobilize and make ourselves heard as much as possible. And I'm here tonight or today to speak about a particular demographic that has often been overlooked. And we have been mobilizing, we have been getting involved in this movement. And it's well past the time that people know who we are and learn more about the work that we do, which is women of color beyond belief. So for those of you who are familiar with the conditions of black folks across the world, across the diaspora, most Black communities and communities of color do tend to be very religious, and most women are affected. The majority of the religious population are women. However, there is a emerging population of women who are going beyond those religious beliefs. They are shedding their traditional indoctrinated religions and coming into secularism, humanism, and non-belief. And in my activism for the past 10 years, I've been fortunate and honored to have connected and worked with quite a few organizers, men, women, LGBTQ, from all identities, but especially women of color who have become involved with my organization as well as other organizations. So this has been a wonderful opportunity. And I think it not only do I think it is very important that more people know about the work that we do and also support it. So I'm going to start my presentation here. I love to give visuals. I don't just like for people to, to just take my word for it. And I also like to also have, some visuals there for folks. So I'm going to get this started. I'm going to share my screen here. And okay, this is always the thing to do with Zoom, Zoom stuff. So for those of you who've seen this presentation before, thank you very much for joining us again. I genuinely hope that you enjoyed this. For those of you who are first timers, I hope you enjoy it again. So I hope you enjoy it the first time. For those of you who've seen this before, I hope you enjoy it again. So the title of this presentation is called Women of Color Beyond Belief. Where do we go from here? Now, behind me, you see the BN banner with our logo. You kind of don't see. I'm going to stand up a little bit. I have our Women of Color Beyond Belief shirt, which was produced for our conference, and I will be talking more about that in just a moment. But first, for those of you who aren't familiar with me, I'm going to just give a bit of background on myself. I am Mandisa Thomas. I am the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers Incorporated, which is headquartered in the Atlanta, Georgia area, but I am a New York City native. I was born and raised in Jamaica, Queens, in New York City, one of the famous cities in the world. And I will always represent New York City for as long as I live. I absolutely, I love being from the city, and I think a lot of my personality does kind of show, that I am an unabashed New Yorker. I've been in the Atlanta area for over 20 years now, and I do love it here, I will say. And I actually had a fairly non-religious upbringing. My upbringing was pretty secular. So I am 44 years old, born in 1976, and I was born during a very, very pivotal time, the 1970s, in the Black community, where there was, it was just after the Civil Rights era, and it was still the era of the Black Panthers, and so there was this huge emphasis on Afrocentricity, history, Black history and culture. And so, if everyone could mute their microphones, that would be great. So I was born in that time period, and there were many Black households and many Black parents who were naming their children African names. And so I was born in that era. So my name, Mandisa, is South African. It is derived from the Xhosa nation of South Africa. And my middle name is Arabic. It's Latifa. So those are my given names. And my upbringing was very much rooted in education and pride in being Black, which is still an issue for many Black communities and many Black folks in the United States and around the world due to institutional racism and injustice. And so there was a concerted effort in many Black households to combat that. And so that is where was a huge part of my upbringing. So just very, very outspoken, learning early on about issues that pertain or that affect the Black community. And so I grew up very, very militant and very outspoken. And that included learning early on about religion and the role that it played in the Black community, and not so much for the better. So I pretty much now I remember the first time I said I was atheist. I acknowledged my atheism at 14 years old. I was asked if I believed in heaven or hell, or I was asked if I was an atheist, and I asked what that meant, and I was told that I didn't believe in heaven or hell. So I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. But over the years, as I got older, I would call myself spiritual, but not religious. But I fully re-identified as an atheist in 2010 and got involved with the community fully in 2011. Now, at the time that Black Nonbelievers was formed, I was working full-time as the event services manager at the Centers for Disease Control here in the Atlanta area. The folks who are mandating the COVID guidelines over here in the United States and working with, the World Health Organizations. And so at the time, that the organization was formed, I was working full time. I also am married with 3 children, and I officially transitioned to full time activism in 2018. So I am going on my 3 years I'm going on 3 years of being full time in this community, and there are different ways that I support my activism because my organization is still volunteer. If you see, there's a Patreon link there that helps support my activism, and any support there would be appreciated. But it was one of the best decisions I ever made because I realized that this was something that I needed to dedicate my life to. And I realized also what my identity as an atheist did for me, and realizing the need to build a community and help build community because I wasn't the only one doing this. So to lend my efforts and what I did to the community, just really had a huge impact on me, and this is where I find myself now. So, in addition to running Black Nonbelievers full time, I also currently serve on the boards for American Atheists, the American Humanist Association, and most recently, I joined the board for Humanist Global Charity, which is an organization that is based in the United States, but they provide support to organizations worldwide. Um, I am the recipient of a few awards. I know that was in the bio, but I'll go through those one by one. I was a recipient of the Secular Student Alliance's Backbone Award in 2019, as well as the Freedom from Religion Foundation's Free Thought Heroine Award that same year. I was the Unitarian Universalist Humanist Association's Person of the Year in 2018. And in 2020, I was the co-recipient of the Harvard Humanist of the Year Award, along with Sakibu Hutchison and Ijoma Oluo. And if you aren't familiar with any of these dynamic folks or any of these organizations, I highly recommend that you take notes and perhaps Google them and do some research and find out more. There's a lot of activism that takes place over here in the States. And again, it is awesome to learn about what is going on around the world. But yes, there's a lot of activism, secular activism here, over here. So for Black Nonbelievers, we are very much event based. Much of our programming is centered around socialization, support for folks who are leaving religion, and also we dedicate ourselves to putting on events that center Black voices, Black activism, Black creativity, and this does play into my skills and expertise of being an event services manager, and also execution and putting things together, just being my skill set. So we have hosted quite a few major events over the years, and we've had some good initiatives. For example, we had the Reason Rally After Party in 2012. There was a huge rally that took place in Washington, D.C. that year. We also held the first ever Blackout Secular Rally the following year in 2013, along with Black Atheists of America. We celebrated our 5th anniversary in 2016. We initiated our Being Changes Lives campaign in 2017. We started hosting cruise conventions, which are now titled BNCCon. We launched our True Liberation Billboard campaign in 2020, and here are the images of the billboards, which we now have on as bumper stickers. We also co-sponsored the Zora Neale Hurston Scholarship with the Secular Student Alliance last year. And we celebrated our 10th anniversary earlier this year in January. So We hosted a hybrid event, partially in New Orleans, Louisiana, another great city in the United States. And it was also held also virtual, so folks got to stream it live as we did the presentations, and a part of a portion of our speakers presented virtually as well. I will reference the link to the presentations later on in this talk. So we have, as an organization, we have a body of work in the past 10 years, and I'm very, very proud of that body of work, which has centered again Black atheists and humanist voices, getting more people involved with organizing, contributing to research, and just amplifying the voices of the much needed voices of our demographic, because it is again, as we still look at the very high religious numbers in the United States and throughout the world, voices of the people of color are still smaller in comparison, and this work that we're doing is very much needed. So the women, so we come to the Women of Color Beyond Belief conference. So Sakivo Hutchinson, who I mentioned was my co-recipient of the Harvard Humanist of the Year Award last year. She runs Black Skeptics Los Angeles and the Women's Leadership Project. So we came together to present the first ever Women of Color Beyond Belief conference in 2018. Due to our own separate events that we had put on, Black Skeptics Los Angeles was partly responsible for the secular social justice conferences that took place in 2014, 2016, and 2018. And so we decided to join forces to present this event that featured all women of color, atheists, humanists, freethinkers, skeptics, secularists, etc., because in 10 years' time, we have encountered and we have worked with a number of women of color who are non believers who don't necessarily have the opportunities to speak at events where their voices need to be heard. So we decided to create this conference, and our other organizer is Bridget Brea Crutchfield. And the first conference took place in Chicago in 2019 from October 4th through the 6th. And the impetus, the foundation, in addition to our working relationship, was this. You see the image here, but I still do have the hard copy of this magazine issue. It is the July-August 2018 Humanist magazine issue. And it features the five fierce humanists, which is myself, Sakivo Hutchinson, Bridget Crutchfield, Candace Gorham, and Liz Ross. And this was the cover article, a cover story for this issue. And it was the first time that multiple Black humanist and atheist women were featured on the cover of any magazine ever. The American Humanist Association, which produces the Humanist magazine, has featured Alice Walker, who was previously a recipient of their Humanist of the Year award. But as far as having multiple women of color on any cover, this was the first time ever. So this is history making. And so building on that issue, and more people learning about our existence and the work that we do, we definitely built on that foundation for the Women of Color Beyond Belief conference. And just as you see here, the women, us women on the cover, you see the women here in person. And of course, as you can see, there's a hair color change on my part since then, which is also speaks to my personality. I tend to be a bit, a bit colorful, a bit, you know, I think flaunting our personalities a bit is really great for us to do because we are human beings and we are social beings, and I think that is absolutely important to show that we are just like anyone else. So if you don't have this issue, if you aren't familiar with the American Humanist Association, the article is actually still active on their website. You can find it at thehumanist.com. So even if you don't have the hard copy, you can definitely find it on the World Wide Web. So the goals for the conference were this: definitely to highlight the perspectives and the work of women of color in the secular community. It was also to increase visibility and opportunities for women of color in the secular community, and also to encourage future support for us women, the organizations that are facilitated by people of color, for example, Black non-believers, and also those who support people of color within their organizations. So there are some major secular organizations that do have people of color working in them. It is good to, and there has been a concerted effort for these organizations, which are still predominantly white, to shift their focus on dismantling white supremacist culture within these organizations, and making a concerted effort to making sure that not just recognizing people of color, but also employing more people of color, and also offering more tangible support. And this is something that we speak to often because it is very, very important. So some of the topics of discussion at Women of Color Beyond Belief 2019 did include criminal justice and reform, some of your standard topics that you might see at any given atheist or humanist event, which are coming out as an atheist, feminism and intersectional feminism, relevancy of the secular movement to women of color, organizing within this community, parenting in this community, end of life preparation, which is important for any community. Surviving domestic abuse as a non-believer, definitely disability and queer disability. So there were a number of, and also reproductive justice. Definitely, those are issues that affect women, but especially women of color, disproportionately in these United States. So these were the issues, these were the topics of discussion, and the women were actually speaking from um, experience, but also being practitioners and working and volunteering in these areas. So it wasn't that we were just affected or impacted by them. We are also actually working in these areas, and it was important to hear from the women who are actually doing this work. And in addition to the conference, we, like most conferences, there were plenary sessions, there were breakouts, and another special thing before I get into the Secure the Bag service project was that it was all inclusive. The admission included breakfast, lunch, and breaks. At most of your conferences, you have to pay for food in addition. We did have a reception and a dinner, which we called the Divas Ball, which were separately ticketed events, but you could also purchase it as a package with the conference. And so one of the things that we wanted to take into consideration was that that we didn't want people to have to, one, have to go out and spend any extra money on food when we could have it sort of like as a one-stop shop. And this is something that most conferences and these things cost money, so we understand the need for separately ticketed events and also raising money. But as we were thinking of who we wanted to attend this event and how we wanted to make it a space that that really felt communal. We included the basic meals in the admission, but in addition to that, one thing that we started that's other conferences and events organizations started doing was incorporating service projects into their conferences. So American Atheist, actually, the Pennsylvania Atheists and non-believers actually started this back in 2015. And it expanded to the American Atheist conventions, and we also incorporated it for women of color beyond belief. But what we wanted to do was make sure that the service project benefited marginalized communities, primarily people of color in the Chicago area. The event was spearheaded by Foundation Beyond Belief, and there were speakers and participants alike who volunteered their time to this effort. And the conference participation, although it was preferred, it was not required. So even if you didn't attend the event, you still could have walked in and volunteered with us. And we packed thousands of meals that benefited these communities. And it was actually a great activity and a great interactive activity for us to do after the sessions. So we like to make sure that we're not just sitting in a space all day. We want to make sure that it is interactive and that people really, really do feel a part, even though they did. This was a good project to incorporate for this event. And so, of course, with everything that we included, sponsorship was very, very much needed, and it was appreciated. And so, some of our sponsors were many of the major organizations within the secular communities in the United States: the Freedom from Religion Foundation, American Atheists, the American Humanist Association, Secular Woman, Compassion and Choices, Secular Student. We also offered childcare for women who needed childcare services and wanted to still attend the event. We also incorporated a payment plan into the conference, because one thing that people don't consider is that perhaps folks may not be able to pay the admission price at one time. So just as just in considering folks budgets and abilities to pay all at once, we offered the opportunity for folks to put down a deposit on the conference, and working with folks to get there as much as they could. And of course, we had individual sponsors who donated they donated uh, for folks who couldn't attend, and so there were folks who got to attend or at the consideration and generosity of others. So we definitely appreciated that as well. And so it really, really helped. It made a huge difference for this event, especially as a first timer. We were really, really again appreciative to have had the support of our partner organizations in the United States, as well as the individuals who support it, as well as those who did register and attended as well. I mean, it was pretty awesome. So as the event was very, very successful, there were over 100 people in attendance total, which was amazing for the first time. I mean, it was a lot of work, but it was very well worth it. And of course, by popular demand, we wanted to bring it back, of course, for 2020. But due to the pandemic, we had to reschedule. So we are now bringing it back for 2021. So it will take place from September 24th through the 26th in Chicago yet again. These are some of the speakers who will be presenting with us this year. We now have incorporated a streaming option. So you can visit the website there if you would like to register to stream it online. We are offering, just as we did for 2019, we are offering student discounted rates, child care payment plan information, and sponsorship opportunities. And it is presented again this year by Black non-believers, Black Skeptics, and the Women's Leadership Project. And the YouTube link here, Madison Page, and also a new speaker for this year, Cynthia McDonald. We did a roundtable yesterday on the Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist channel, and those will be two of our speakers. If you can find that link, I highly recommend that you watch it to hear. And one of our organizers and participants this evening, Kevon Cameron, who is our New York City organizer, was also on that roundtable. So I highly recommend you check it out. If you have not heard other Black atheist and humanist voices, please do check out that link just for an example of our perspectives and hearing the work that we do. It is very, very powerful. And once again, I am absolutely glad to be a part of amplifying our voices. And if you are, hopefully, you will consider attending this year's Women of Color Beyond Belief event. So please do mark your calendars. So the question is, can anyone attend? If you saw the flyer on the previous slide, it said come one, come all. And of course, the answer to that is yes. One of the things that we tend to get as people of color, especially those of us who are producing our own content and producing our own events, we get folks who say, well, I'm white, can I attend? Partially because they're not sure, they are genuinely unsure if it would be okay for them to attend. But of course, we have some trolls who are like, well, why does there need to be an event called Women of Color Beyond Belief? So sometimes we get those, but the answer is yes. In order for the overall community to truly gain a better understanding of our perspectives and also how we are impacted in the work that we do, you need to show up. And you also need to support. So, yes, this is an example of the American Humanist Association's table at the 2019 Women of Color Beyond Belief. And Howard, who is sitting there, is one of the board members. That is Anais, is one of their former social justice coordinators. But there is an exception to that. Anyone who intends to derail the conference focus, believers and non-believers alike. And I say this because unfortunately in our communities and within our organizations, we do have some atheists and humanists who don't always display those qualities in a positive light. So we have had to vet some folks to make sure that they aren't derailing the conversations and that the women are feel safe enough to express themselves without being bombarded with a bunch of uh, uncomfortable questions and also irrelevant questions. And I will say that at the event, there was a Black gentleman who was a Christian who happened to be at the hotel. And when he asked about the event, he started getting argumentative. He became very argumentative and was trying to debate the existence of God with us. I mean, it was a very, very that was a very, very challenging moment. We've had a few of those over the years, but that does come along with the territory of being open and out there. But we eventually we handled it well. I was very proud of the folks who had those conversations, and we eventually told him to scoot. We told him to just go somewhere. Um, so yes, the event is open to anyone, but of course there are some exceptions. And if you think that you might not be objective enough to listen and that you might be defensive, because and this takes a deep dive. This takes for you to truly reflect on what on how you might be. If you don't feel like it's for you, then that's fine. But of course, we hope that people will attend and support and be objective and listen and learn. And do we still need support? Absolutely. And yes, 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 so many times. So of course, as I said before, events aren't cheap. They do take time, effort, and money to put on. So we definitely need conference support, and for this year is no exception. So we encourage you to visit womenofcolorbeyondbelief.com and also blacknonbelievers.org to offer your support for this very important event. And so, in conclusion, where to go from here? I know that a few years back in Australia, I know there was a global secular humanist convention that took place there. I'm not sure if it still takes place or if I think there might have been, I think they might have put them on hiatus for a while, but for the most part, at your average conventions, you still only very rarely see few people of color. And this is a concern around the world. But it doesn't mean that people of color aren't mobilizing, that they aren't leaving religion, because we are. And the question is, how are our organizations and how are our communities prepared to not just be more welcoming, but how are we preparing to welcome more people of color and our perspectives, what we bring to the table into leadership, and how does that impact our organizations? And one of the most important things that Black Nonbelievers does, again, is amplify our voices. There is a difference when you see more people of color and more women of color show up. I will tell you, if you were, there were a few people here on this call, on this meeting, who were in attendance at that event. It is powerful to see an almost, a senior citizen. There was a Black woman there, Miss Arlena, who was about 80 years old. She said she had been an atheist most of her life, but never connected with anyone else until that event. It makes a difference to see more people of color, more Black folks who are not just in attendance, but who are also organizing, who are in leadership, who are speaking to the issues that impact us. This makes a difference. And and the warmth that was there, and the camaraderie and the love, and what was felt there at that event was just undeniable. You begin to, and one of the, again, I said this in the beginning, that it is a great thing to connect with humanists and atheists around the world. And we have had the opportunity to connect with many people of color on the African continent, uh, and in other continents. And I actually look forward to the day where we perhaps see more people of color from Australia, perhaps more Aboriginal folks or other people of color whom you may not, whose voices may not have been heard before. But this is a part of what we do. We didn't want to wait. We weren't waiting for the community to, to help increase and expand our voices. We took that step to do it. And in order for us to continue to do that, we need the help. And we need the support, because, again, these women deserve to be heard, and they also deserve to be a part of the global humanist community, where more folks know about the work that we do. And so this is just a start. This is only the beginning. There are more. There are many more women of color. There are many more people of color who are involved in this community and in this movement. And also, there will be more coming behind us. And we want to make sure that there is still a place for them to get involved and get active and help grow and develop once we can no longer do this. So we want to continue. We want to make sure that this is going for years to come. And so, as we continue to do this work, as we continue to highlight those voices and the perspectives, again, your support and the community and the collaborations will be needed. And it's important to take note, to take heed, that there are, again, more of us coming. There are more of us here. There are more of us coming. And again, how we prepare ourselves and help prepare them in how we work together, how we form our communities, and how we build will make all of the difference in the world, literally, not just figuratively, literally now. And so I'm very, very, again, appreciative for this opportunity to present to you on Women of Color Beyond Belief on Women's Day in Australia, which will be Women's Day tomorrow in the United States. And you please do follow and subscribe to Black Nonbelievers on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Black Nonbelievers. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. And that's where you can find our presentations from our 10th anniversary, as well as the 2019 Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference. You can go to playlists and find those talks. And we also encourage you to donate and support Black Nonbelievers at our website. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and donations to us are tax deductible. We are also on Cash App, if you are familiar with that app, at Black Nonbelievers. You may also request a foundation giving request to us. You may also choose us as a beneficiary on Amazon Smile. If you shop on Amazon frequently, you can choose us as a beneficiary. If you have a TD Ameritrade stock account, you can transfer stock to us. And with the exception of the combined federal campaign in the United States, if your place of work has a charitable giving program, you can designate a portion of your paycheck to benefit our organization. All you need is our tax ID number, which is on our website. And also, we have an online store. You can find that on our website. So if you like any of our swag, if you like our t-shirts, we have mugs, we have shot glasses, we have all kinds of stuff to represent atheism, represent our community and our organization. So we hope you take a look there. And so at this point, I'd like to thank you all very much. Please visit the Black Nonbelievers YouTube channel to see the recorded presentations. And you may also follow Women of Color Beyond Belief on social media and on Twitter, and on Instagram. And so I'd like to once again thank you very much. And now we have time for questions. Thank you.
I think Jeff might have frozen there. So if he's having, oh, you're back, Jeff? He's having some difficulties. I would ask I'll kick off the questions myself if that's okay, and I'll ask if anyone else has questions, please use the reactions button to raise your hand, and Jeff or I will call on you. Mandisa, the Australian humanist movement has been trying to increase diversity for a while. For example, the Canberra community ran a survey of all of the people in our meetup group to ask them how they think we can better support people from diverse backgrounds. Do you have any ideas for how we might increase our diversity and help people who come to us from different backgrounds feel more supported and included when they get here?
Yes, so one of the things that I often recommend to predominantly white organizations is to be mindful of your content. So if there is an opportunity to highlight people of color, any of the indigenous folks who are in fact humanists, if there's history there, you incorporate some of that education and that information, and also other people of color who who are, and even if they aren't indigenous to Australia, it might be good to have some programming surrounding like Black History Month. We just incorporated a recommended resources and viewing tab on our website. So if there's any info there, there might be some good information there that you might want to present to your groups and also share them with organizations. I'm not sure the type of outreach that you do in Australia. If you if you do happen to hit any of the indigenous populations or other people of color, that would be good to do as well. I know sometimes it can be a challenge to speak publicly about our perspectives. I've been sort of I've been sort of keeping myself in the loop on what goes on down there in Australia. It seems to be somewhat a bit more liberal there. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but even if it is a challenge to be out and host your events publicly, it's still good to do. And also, again, it is very, very good to, consider your content, diversifying that, and making sure you're listening to the people of color that you do engage and welcome their input, and not just welcome their input, act on it. That's always a big thing. I'm a very, very big action person. It is more. It is important that we do more than just talk. We actually have to incorporate and do it. So just keeping that in mind for your leadership and your programming and everything that you do, it is good to take some information from, even if it's from Black humanists here in the United States, on the continent of Africa, and if there is some history there in Australia, then definitely make a good attempt to highlight it, and not just during certain months or just one-time efforts. It has to be consistent.
I have a question, if I may.
Hello.
Hi,
Yes.
Mandisa. Thank you for speaking to us, and congratulations on your 10-year anniversary as well. I'm a student at the University of Melbourne in Australia, and I'm thinking about how COVID has impacted people of alternative or non-religious forms of faith. And I'm wondering if you can speak to how you personally are responding to the pandemic, how you're practicing non-religious forms of faith, and whether or not you're seeing any young people of color, whether that be Black or non-Black people of color, coming out as atheists or questioning during these unprecedented times of uncertainty.
Yes. So, as an organization, we encourage everyone to follow the science. We, of course, have transitioned to more virtual events in the past year, especially when the pandemic first hit. We transitioned just like everyone else. We made that adjustment because we realized that the safety of our members and the safety of the general public was more important than us meeting in person. So we definitely and we did see quite a few people over here in the United States who were at church gatherings and large gatherings who were dying from COVID, because either they weren't aware of what was going on at the time, or they ignored it, and they ignored they ignored the guidelines, and they would gather anyway. So yeah, there were a disproportionate number of people of color here who were catching COVID and also dying, and they were from the religious communities. And so for us, we made sure that, again, we encouraged, we followed the safety and social distancing guidelines early on. And we also participated. I know here in Atlanta, we volunteered with another organization who was doing canvassing, and also offering who were also offering food packages to people in the neighborhood if they needed it. And so we started volunteering with them and then of course we made sure that we put on our masks and did the safety and social distancing thing. So there were and there were also other atheists and humanists who were starting to get involved with COVID relief efforts. I know the Black Skeptics Los Angeles and the Women's Leadership Project, they offer they have a COVID relief fund. So they are, for anyone who was financially impacted, they had a grant for people who needed it. So there were different ways that people responded. And one thing that was very interesting was that there were some folks who actually held tighter to their faith, even though it was very ironic that many churches took to the virtual sphere as well. They took advantage of the science and the technology, even in the time. So there are Pew Research just released a new study about religion and Black life in the United States. And it's still on par with 79% of the Black community still identifying as religious. But what's happening is that more younger people are starting to shed those traditional beliefs. And I think in 2020, a part of that is due to the pandemic, the fact that there have been pandemics throughout human history, right? We've also seen a surge of different viruses, SARS, H1N1, and all of these other, but this is almost unprecedented with COVID. I do think that this was a good opportunity for more people to express their dissent with religion. We've also seen a rise in progressive religious folks who are dissatisfied with the church's teachings and how and the response to what is considered religious freedom. There are a lot of them that are recognizing that that Christianity in particular has been a hindrance to those freedoms, and so there are more people who are now expressing that. There is still a smaller number of folks who are within the Black communities and communities of color who are who are openly identifying as atheists and non-believers, but there are more folks who are definitely expressing their dissent with and there are even a lot more Christians who are starting to acknowledge Christianity as white supremacy, which we've been saying this for a very, very long time. But there are now more, and there are more younger people who, especially as we saw around the world saw the death of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and as this movement is still picking up traction and people are seeing what Black folks still go through in these United States, there is a global cry for Black Lives Matter, and people are starting to understand and recognize that religion is playing a huge role in white supremacy and racism and injustice, and more people are actually starting to speak up on that.
Thank you, Mandisa. I'm just wondering, we do have a number of people from overseas, and I'm wondering if any of those people would like to ask questions, either directly or through me. Please do put your hand up and let us know. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Melissa has had her hand up for a while too, Jeff.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you for your talk, and I'm impressed with all your organizing ability and energy. I've always been worried because it outrages me that among African Americans and similarly here in Australia among Aborigines, they've been subjected to a double displacement. They've had their land taken and their languages suppressed, and then on top of that, they've been subject to missionaries who've imposed this white person's religion on them. But it really worries me that there are many Aboriginal people, and I'm sure many African American people, for whom their religion is a source of solace. And I know that many civil rights movements have centered around churches, and churches have been supportive places for people trying to get their rights. And so it would be, I'm conflicted. Do you understand what I'm saying? And
Yes, I do. I understand exactly where you're coming from, Melissa. And this also speaks to the challenges that we face as Black folks around the world, and dealing with the colonialism and the racism of Christianity, but also Christianity and white supremacy, but also dealing with the fact that these institutions still largely represent our communities. And it's, here in the United States, and probably in, definitely in Australia as well, it's like a double-edged sword. You have these churches who you had denominations of Christianity in the United States that were anti-slavery. You had the Quakers who were anti-slavery. You had different denominations of Christianity established, like the African Methodist Episcopal denomination, which was established by Richard Allen, a former slave. So there is a lot, and also there were many churches that were responsible for establishing the historically Black colleges and universities here in the United States. So, um, there was a lot that many that there were a lot of churches, a lot of churches did, although it still doesn't, it still doesn't erase the doctrine. It doesn't erase the horrific history. And so you have here, when you're talking about generations of being being forced to accept this religion, to the point where you take it on, and you throw away the bad parts, and then you use the parts for the community. And I will say, as far as the civil rights movement, using the churches and was more strategic than anything else. There have always been non-believers and humanists involved with the civil rights movement, and people from other religious backgrounds. So it wasn't that the church or the Christian leaders were at the center of it. It was definitely more strategic, and it was a way to try and bring more people into the movement. And I will say that actually there were a lot of churches that were reluctant to get involved in the civil rights movement, because it was dangerous. For one, I mean, it was very dangerous, especially in the southeastern part of the United States. I mean, you could be killed for being associated, and we've seen there's plenty of evidence of, and we've also seen this in the resistance movements in South Africa, in fighting apartheid. We've seen this in resistance movements throughout the world, where when Black folks and people of color rise up, it often means it often means a tragic loss of life, and that was no different. So, there's definitely, we acknowledge the role that the church played. If you're familiar with public broadcasting services over here in the United States, there was recently a two-part documentary called "The Black Church" that aired on public television here. Since I'm not, since my upbringing wasn't rooted in Christianity and the Black church in particular, I'm very ambivalent to watch. But it's some fascinating history if you want to learn more about why the church plays such a huge role. And we definitely understand the confliction, and also being tactful about it. And this is one thing that many non-Black or non-POC atheists need to understand, is that there is a whole institutional factor as to why more people of color and more Black folks are deeply religious. And it is going to take some work. It is going to take some time, and it is going to take a lot of collaborative efforts and support for our organizations that are doing this work, who are helping those who have felt isolated, especially coming from these communities. So, we try to reach. I don't think that in our lifetime that everyone is going to ever leave religion, and this is white folks included, but reaching those folks who are there, making sure that they know that our organizations exist, our communities exist, and there is a place for them, is going to be very, very important, all while incorporating the history.
thank you.
Rod had his hand up next.
Thanks, Marianne, and thanks, Mandisa. It's been fantastic. I just want to follow on from that little part about the confliction and whatever. I'm like a lot of atheists, I think, who, of my age particularly, who grew up in some sort of religion and then sort of stepped out of it. And I understand the confliction Melissa was talking about, and I understand the history. And I think what I want to suggest is that the humanist movement needs to step up and fill that sort of gap that that those churches are still filling, that need for social connection and some of the social activism that goes on out of some of them. We need to be doing that, and that way people can leave and they can have their cake and eat it. They can still have their support and their solace and whatever else, and that we need to be able to tell them a story that is easy to understand about how life can be good and death is not something to be frightened of, and all those messages that that traditionally they've gone to religion to get. They don't need that, but they do need the social side, and they do need that story. One of the things we're exploring at Humanists Australia is setting up communities like that, and we've been talking to a group in the US called the Oasis Network.
Yes.
And I'm wondering whether you have any connection there or know of their work, and how you see that fitting with the sort of work that you're doing.
Actually, I have spoken with both the Houston Oasis, the Kansas City Oasis, and I will be speaking with the Orlando, Florida area Oasis group coming
Right.
up. And so, yes, much of what Black non-believers does as well is, like I said, it's very much social interaction, social activism, and there are communities like Oasis. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sunday Assembly that was started by Sanderson and Pippa out of Britain. And so it's been jokingly dubbed the atheist church. I know that might be a turnoff for some people, but one of the good things that I enjoy about it is that you can sort of make it your own. And for myself, I forgot to mention that, or I didn't really mention this, that I also have a creative background. I'm a classically trained singer. And so I have a background in creativity and I love the arts. And I think that in our communities, we are so focused on, research and evidence regarding religion and that intellectualism that we forget that the creativity is a part of us. It is a part of all of us. And it doesn't have to be separate from each other. And you mentioned that there are a lot of humanists here in the United States that when the American Humanist Association started speaking on Black Lives Matter, there was a lot of pushback with a lot of white humanists here in the United States. They couldn't understand why. Yes, they couldn't understand it. And I mean, the organization does have a history of speaking to racial justice issues and such. And they many of them don't seem to understand how this work affects us and how these issues affect us as human beings. I mean, and there have always been humanists involved in resistance movements, and I contend that it is important for us to actually state that we are humanists and that we are non-believers. It is important for us to normalize our perspectives. And as hard as it may be, because this gives an opportunity for people to see that, we're not these devil worshipers. If we don't believe in a God, we don't believe in a devil. They're all fictional to us, right? And so, and yes, actually, we are the ones who should, if we're not, we should be on that side of history that shows that we are working for the betterment of humanity, because it is the thing to do, because we want people to do better and that there is no divine reward for it. It's because, it's because it is needed for us. And I think it's important for us to get out of that idea that we're just talking about it. incorporating and adopting more practical humanism. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are some cues that we can take from some religious institutions and what they do, and that they don't have the monopoly on. There are older secular organizations that have been doing good work for communities and for people that have nothing to do with religion. And I think sometimes we give those institutions too much power, as if they have the monopoly or if they've invented doing good for the world, and they haven't. So that re-education is important. And like you said, also involving ourselves if we can, because many of us, we have our lives, we have our families, we have we have our schoolwork, we have our jobs, we have a lot of things, but doing what we can with the time that we have is definitely important. So yes, I'm familiar with pretty much almost every organization there, and I think Oasis is really doing some great work to bring it back to that point. Well, Jeff, if you're talking, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was just asking Debbie if you'd like to ask a question.
Okay. Hey there, thanks. My question, I think, is a bit of a follow-on from some of the other things that have just been being discussed about people moving out of, very religious communities and still needing community and connection, and something that helps you deal with life when life is challenging and difficult. I strongly believe that humanism is a good thing to fill that gap, but I think we've all been quite aware in the humanist society here that we're also very, very white, and I think some of us have been trying to change that by becoming more educated ourselves in anti-racism and that sort of thing. And actually, for anyone who hasn't read Ijeoma Olo's book, she was mentioned before. So you want to talk about race, it's very good. So yeah, I guess I'm wondering, do you have any, I'm really looking for a book recommendation. There's any number of excellent anti-racism books out there at the moment, but is there anything you know about that is very specifically looking at religion and leaving religion or coming out of religion, and is giving information about what that means, what's different about that for people of color? What's different about that, about coming out of communities of color? Like, is there anything that could help us more specifically understand that aspect?
Absolutely. I have the perfect book for you. It's called The Ebony Exodus Project, which was written by Candace Gorham, who is one of the 5 Fierce Humanists.
Awesome.
Her book is actually on if you go to our website, to the recommended viewing and resources tab, there is a link to that book. It is available on Amazon Prime. You can get it on on your Kindle. You can download. I think there's an audio version now, and there are some. Candace is a mental health professional. She's a former pastor, and she also has some stories of Black women, mine included, who are non-religious. And so, yes, I highly recommend her reading her book to start. Sakibu Hutchinson also has a body of work. Her most recent book, Humanists in the Hood, was released in 2020. It talks about the work that we Black women in the United States have been doing to combat, the religious, the religious presence here in the United States. And so, yeah, we have worked with quite a few folks. And yes, Candace Gorham's book in particular, I highly recommend reading to learn more about that.
Also, and it's the Ebony Exit Project.
Yes, Ebony Exodus Project.
Exodus. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, if I may follow on from what a number of people have said and ask a question. Myself, Mandisa.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, look, as a Rainbow Atheist, I'm also aware in terms of African American communities in the United States and even going back to Africa today, LGBTQ people there, across places in South America, Asia, etc. There are many of the problems that you've alluded to. What can we do to help people in these situations and in these communities?
The best thing would definitely be to support, if you can, like the international humanist community, and directly support the organizations that are on the ground in these areas. Our organization is we built it into our mission that we are always support the LGBTQ community. Many of our organizers are actually, and myself, we represent the LGBTQ community. So that is built into our mission. That is built into our framework. And yes, I think direct support is always good. Direct collaborations are good. Reaching out to those organizations, because you'll probably find that there are many more atheists in those organizations, but they aren't aware that our organizations and our communities exist, and they also don't they may not realize that, like, there was a I was at an event in Phoenix at the end of 2019, and there was a Latinx woman who did some work on like reproductive justice, and as we were talking, she didn't really think about the fact that, you know, she didn't really think about communities for non-believers, and an atheist, didn't think about the importance of that. And so, the cross collaboration, the cross pollination is absolutely important. And if there is an opportunity to directly connect with those organizations, um, featuring folks who work with those organizations in your programming would be great, and encouraging folks to support them is gonna that's always a really, really good way to reach out and help more.
All right, thank you. Are there any more questions? I'm aware of the time and that we will have to finish fairly promptly. I'd just like to invite any last question. No? All right, well, look, thank you very much, Mandisa. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion? I'd like to thank you. I think you've given us very much a great deal of food for thought. You've challenged us, which is fantastic. I've appreciated the opportunity to listen and hopefully to learn, and I hope others have too. Is there anything you'd like to say to conclude?
Also, that's what I do. But I like to do so in a way that that people are learning, that people feel empowered and inspired, and also feel like we're a part of a team. But this is a team effort. And I really just would like to close by saying thank you to everyone who attended this evening or this afternoon. And keep up the work. It's a lot. It can be challenging, it can be hard, but it's worth it to know that people are impacted positively by what we do. And you're definitely going to see more of us in the future, and please stay tuned. And I look forward to the day that I can meet you all in person in Australia, because again, it is on my bucket list. So I would absolutely love to work on coming there in person. So yeah, let's get to work on that too.
It would be great to see you out here, Mandisa. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone.